Good afternoon. This is Wayman Hunt, and I'm one of the owners at Godfrey's. And Breck Debenham here looks after all of our cattle down here at Innisfail. We've got a herd of Hereford cattle down here, and my kids show a little bit. And Breck helps us with the show cattle as well as the breeding cattle, and does a great job for us. And today, Montana has asked us to come down and talk a little bit about some of the feeds that we use, and in particular Natural Fill, which is a new product that we're carrying. I think that we've had a lot of success with it, and I think the best thing to do is kind of let Breck tell us how he uses it on a daily basis.
So the Natural Fill is something that we've had a lot of success with. Something from hauling cattle across the country to every day at home. I think it definitely has a big place in our feeding program. Right now, we're looking at being about 2 weeks away from moving into the Georgia National Livestock Expo. So with that being in mind, something we're doing is making sure these cattle get the same 2 feedings that they would on a normal basis, and making sure that their nutritional requirements are met via either the winning program stuffed or winning program grower feeds. And then around lunchtime, if you're able to, or if you're at school, maybe right when you get off the school bus, a good thing to do would be throw about 5 pounds of that Natural Fill in front of them in their pans just before you feed them in the evening. And then once they finish their evening feeding, about as late as you can stand feeding them, go ahead and give them another 5 pounds. And I just think that that helps keep the rumen full, and there's also a lot of stuff to that Natural Fill in terms of increasing feed digestibility and intake.
One of the good things too is these cattle, especially on these high energy diets, can get a lot of corn in their system, and getting this Natural Fill in there adds a little bit of fiber to their diet, a little bit more fiber to their diet. You can go as far as replacing their hay with this stuff, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah. We've been real pleased with it. One thing too, Breck was talking about moving in at the state show. You know, the more fiber we can push through these cattle, especially going into the show like that, we can keep their digestion a little bit more consistent and keep them firm. And I think that's a big deal, getting into the show and keeping those rumens working properly, and because if they start getting loose on you, then we can lose a lot of fill on these cattle as well. And if the more fiber we can have in that diet, the slower the passage rate is on everything through there, and we can keep them a little bit fuller, as well as taking advantage of increased digestibility by slowing it down. One of the other things that we do a fair bit of is we use double barrel. And double barrel, it is a lot less digestible than the winning fill is. You want to talk maybe a little bit about how we use that double barrel in conjunction with the feed and in conjunction with the Natural Fill?
Yeah, absolutely. So the double barrel has been a great top dress product for us here. About 3 pounds of feeding is about what I can get into one, and I just feel like the swell and the added fill that it creates helps a lot with just expanding that rumen and making sure that you can get that animal fuller on show day, as well as helping to slow down some of those nutrients that we're putting them in them with the other feeds. I think that's something that there's a lot of different ways you can go about feeding it. I usually try and mix it in with either the stuffed or the grower feed as we're feeding them their grain. But I also, while we were in Oklahoma City, top dress the Natural Fill that they're eating throughout the day with some double barrel, and help get that in them, and help get a little bit more swell and just a little bit more fill as they're standing there in the stall throughout the day and people are walking through the barns.
One of the things that we talk about around here is the digestibility of the Natural Fill versus the double barrel, and I think that those two they piggyback on each other, but they're different as well, in that the cattle will not put on any condition with double barrel, and you can get them full. You know, double barrel is great on a daily basis to help expand that rumen and keep them increasing their fill on a daily basis. And you can do that without adding any energy to it. The natural fill will do some of the same because it's got cob. Both of those products have cob in them. The double barrel has quite a bit of cob, and when it gets inside the rumen, it'll swell to about 3 times the size of what it was before you put it in them. The natural fill also has a little bit of cob in it. It'll get some swell from that as well, but it just keeps them full, from top to bottom full. And so when you feed the natural fill, it's you can still put some condition on them with natural fill. So I think you may need to be careful with natural fill from that standpoint, as far as getting one. You can get one too fat. If you got one that's too fat, you probably need to be leaning a little bit heavier on the double barrel, keeping them full that way. But if you got one you still want to continue to put a little bit of condition on, then you can lean a little bit heavier on the natural fill. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think the double barrel has done us a lot of good when we're trying to hold cattle in between shows and just keep them more in a stagnant state of condition, and keeping that rumen fill so that when it's time to come back in the show barn and bloom back up, I can replace a little bit of that double barrel with some feed and put bloom on them just a little bit quicker, and it's not quite as hard on the gut.
So, talking about hay, we'll also use a good bit of hay here, and I mentioned earlier that you could replace your hay consumption with the natural fill if you wanted to. One thing with a lot of these baleage products too is and this kind of adds to the benefits of it, but these baleage products cattle will luxury consume baleage, and they'll eat more of it than they necessarily need. It's not kind of self-limiting like hay is. And so you can feed a lot of this stuff. And we still like to put some hay out there. Even at night, we'll put a flake or two per head out there and keep that hay in them as well. Is there anything else you think we need to cover with the natural fill?
I think that's good.
Well, we appreciate your time and your interest, and thanks for tuning in. And hopefully we'll be doing more of these type of exercises in the future.